Transmitting to you from Old Heart Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's right. This is another episode of Coffee and Contemplation, your most least consistent podcast. That being said, let's just knock this out of the way. Go on Instagram, follow us at Old Heart Radio, follow us on Spotify at Old Heart Radio, or follow us on Twitter at Old Heart in Space. Keep up to date on whatever we're doing whenever we update those social media platforms. If you don't like social mediaing, then just tell all your friends, tell yourself, tell whomever to listen to the podcast on Spotify or iTunes or iHeartRadio. Just look up Old Heart Radio. That simple, people. Knocking that out of the way, today we have a wealthy topic. I don't know what that means. We today are talking about one of my, not necessarily one of my favorite childhood toys, but a childhood toy I had, Stretch Armstrong. More correctly, and I'll talk about this a little later, but more correctly, I personally had a Vac-Man Stretch Armstrong doll. It was like a line. It was like a character in the line of Stretch Armstrong universe. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So first off, though, Stretch Armstrong. Stretch Armstrong, if you don't know, is an action figure. It's classified as an action figure, although I don't think it was really meant for action. But it's a figure that it's large, it's gel filled, and it was introduced in 1976 by Kenner. In 2016, Hasbro actually announced the return of the original 1976 design of Stretch Armstrong, but let's push that aside. So again, the Stretch Armstrong is classified as an action figure. He is generally a blonde-haired, white male character, sort of shown as short and muscular. The doll's most notable features that it could be stretched. Wow, really cool. From about 15 inches to even up to 4 feet. So, how did they make that stretching happen? When did this idea come about? Who the fuck woke up one day and was like, let's make a stretch man doll? It was definitely somebody who probably loved the Fantastic Four, most specifically Mr. Fantastic and Flash Gordon, is what I bet. Like, Stretch Armstrong reminds me of a stretching shirtless Flash Gordon. Take that for whatever it's worth. So back in 1976. Well, not necessarily 1976, but back in the 70s, there's a dude named Jesse D. Horowitz. He was the designer, an industrial designer for Kenner's R&D group. He came up with the idea of Stretch Armstrong. The Stretch Man idea, as it was called, was originally going to try to do a couple of different body types. So one was a sumo wrestler, which would have been fucking awesome. Like, that would have been a really cool, stretch the sumo as big as you can. And the other one was what was described as an, quote, all-American blonde hunk. So, as we all kind of figured, the all-American blonde hunk is the one that took off for some reason. I don't even know if they actually ended up pursuing the sumo, because supposedly the problem was that the sumo man was too bulky and large in terms of just the original doll. So kind of trying to get it to stretch and be a reasonable kind of child's play toy I guess didn't work out. Originally, they were trying to do springs inside these dolls, but they found that would not work, mainly because the springs would not only be really stiff and hard, but they would also poke through the rubber skin that they would try and wrap around it. So, to kind of figure this out, they pursued a different kind of idea. They pursued a liquid sugar to put into these bodies. So they bought a fuckload of Caro corn syrup, which was purchased from just like a supermarket. They boiled the syrup down to get the proper viscosity that they were going for, and then they presented the concept to Kenner's president at the time, Bernie Loomis. I had a vice principal named Greg Loomis back in the day. Greg Loomis was a fucking bulldog. Like, he was a prick. He would always, I would always get in fights. Not necessarily me. I would get in fights, or I'd get in altercations, or I'd get in these potential bullying situations, where I would be most of the time the bully, the victim of the bullying. And this motherfucker would always blame me. Anyway, we're not talking about Greg Loomis. We were talking about Bernie Loomis. So, so they, like I said, they eventually decided to use corn syrup to create that stretchy, sort of rigid feel that you get if you've ever played with a Stretch Armstrong. There are tons of different actual toys in the Stretch Armstrong line, technically. And a lot of them are, this toy line was so out of the blue to me. Shit, shout-outs to my homies Mariah and Casey. Thanks for listening. Shout-outs to Uncaged. You're awesome. Shout-outs to Mooner6. I miss you. Shout-outs to my co-host Castle Roll. You're fucking rad. Shout-outs to anybody listening out there. Thank you so much. You guys are fantastic folks for listening to this bullshit that I just churn out of my mouth. I'll say it again one more time. Go follow us online at Old Heart Radio, or on Twitter at Old Heart in Space. But back to Stretch. So there is an estimated 67 different versions of Stretch Armstrong toys across the globe. They were mainly produced in places like Japan, Germany, Italy, France, and Australia, as well as obviously the States, all between the years 1976 and through the 1990s. So like I said earlier, there's a handful of little different characters in this line. I mean, it's crazy to me because this wasn't ever. It was just a toy. You remember when He-Man became a thing? He-Man was it was a toy line. It was a toy line that had a cartoon developed to make it popular. Stretch Armstrong was just a toy line. And this was the cool thing about toys back in the day. Toys could take the fuck off. I remember getting the Sears toy catalog every year. I would basically for poor kids or kids whose parents couldn't afford a lot extra, it was like a taunt. It was a big fuck you, the Sears toy magazine. But Stretch Armstrong was in there. Okay, that was my original point. So some of the other characters that were presented in this line were the Stretch X-Ray, which was from 1977. It had an oversized, exposed brain and an alien-looking face. What was called a Harbert Sport Mr. Muscolo, which was a 1977 Italian version of Stretch Armstrong. Yeah, again, Harbert Sport Mr. Muscolo. Okay. We had a Lil Lady El Hombro El Elastico. I love butchering these. So that the Lily Lady El Hombre El Elastico is the Mexican version of Stretch Armstrong. I should have casserole on here to pronounce that one. The Sukuda Mr. X was a Japanese version of Stretch Armstrong. The Stretch Monster was actually a reptilian green nemesis that was created by Kenner in 1978 to be a nemesis of Stretch Armstrong. The Sport Mr. Mostro, it was an Italian version. There's a Sukudu Stretch Monster, which is another Japanese addendum. There's Stretch Ollie and Stretch Olivia, which were male and female octopuses, octopi, if you will, that were introduced both by Kenner. Ollie was apparently the more popular of the two. Ollie was more popular than Olivia. Shoutouts to my homie Olivia. Let's see. There was, oh my gosh, Denise Fisher, Stretch, Incredible Hulk. There's an Incredible Stretch. See, this is what you could. This is the beauty of Stretch Armstrong right here. You could bring in these other characters, like a Stretch Armstrong Hulk. You could stretch that corn syrup out, make his muscles super big and stuff. 1979, they dropped that Incredible Hulk doll. Mego Elastic made a Donald Duck and a Mickey Mouse in 1980. Mego Elastic also made a Stretch Armstrong-esque Batman doll, which is fucking rad. The perfect answer for any Stretch Armstrong line, the Plastic Man doll. The 1979 Mego Elastic made a Plastic Man version of this like Stretch Armstrong-esque, character. Oh shit. There's the Vac Man, man. Where's the Vac Man? So I had what was called a Vac Man. So Vac Man was, I believe, like a nemesis to Stretch Armstrong. He was a red. His character, unlike Stretch Armstrong, who was a blonde American hunk. Vac-Man was like a creature from another world or some shit, right? Came out in like 1994. Vac-Man is created as the nemesis of Stretch Armstrong, and it is suggested that he is from a faraway galaxy. So he was all red. He had this like device on his head that you shoved a little vacuum in, and you sucked all the air out to make him like more rigid and tough, and you could stretch his fucking shit. Unlike the Stretch dolls, which contained a syrup-like liquid inside a rubber sheath, Vac-Man contained a grainy solid produced from ground-up corn cobs. What the fuck? That's cool. But by attaching the provided pump, like I said, to the socket inside, which is on the side of Vac-Man's head, you could suck all the air out of the body and make it rigid. It could then be stretched. Unlike Stretch Armstrong, it would retain its stretch shape until air was let back in. So that was like the main difference. And that doll, like the Vac-Man thing lasted me for years. Like, I remember my folks got me that, and even though I didn't even want, like, I don't even know if I asked for the Vac-Man. I probably asked for a Stretch Armstrong and they were out. It was like a classic Jingle All the Way situation, right? Like Stretch Armstrong is completely sold out, so every parent that was running late got their kids a fucking Vac-Man. Either way, Stretch Armstrong was like a really out there character. The toy was like kind of one purpose. You really couldn't do much with it. In 2017, IDW announced like a Stretch Armstrong and the Flex Fighters comic book. Netflix had a show scheduled for 2018. I don't even know if that happened. But it was just like, it was a toy that like really captured attention when the simplicity of what kids wanted in toys was greater, I guess. Either way, this has been a really random episode of something that I experienced as a kid. You probably didn't have any interactions with Stretch Armstrong. If you did, kudos to you. If you did not, well, whatever. Go out there and use your brains for good today, kids, because every day is a good day to ripen up that coconut. And remember, this is another episode of Coffee and Contemplation. If you like it, tell all your friends. Oh, and keep your stick on the ice.